happened to chivalry? Does it only exist in 80s movies? I want John Cusack holding a boombox outside my window. I want to ride off on a lawnmower with Patrick Dempsey. I want Jake from 16 Candles waiting outside the church for me. I want Judd Nelson thrusting his fist into the air because he knows he got me just once. I want my life to be like an 80s movie. Preferably one with a really awesome musical number, for no apparent reason. But no, John Hughes did not direct my life, so instead of all that, I get to save 15 cents on a bottle of Juniper Breeze antibacterial.
Cinderella story.
You want answers?
We're on a mission from God.
Inconceivable! Take your sticking paws off me!
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Have fun storming the castle!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Story Cauldron, finding the folktales, fables, and philosophies behind your favorite Hollywood films. I'm Bobby, the movie dude.
I'm Anthony, the philosophy guy.
I'm Garrett, and I am so very excited to be here today.
And this is the podcast where we explore where our stories come from. We are following in the footsteps of our favorite J.R.R. Tolkien, who talked about how the cauldron of story is always bubbling, always getting new bits added to it from historical events and from other stories that we tell. And so when we make movies, we are being creative by following in the footsteps of all those storytellers that came before.
And today, it's a movie that debates whether lying is worse than adultery, as it pretends that high school students are 17th century Puritans. It's Nathaniel Hawthorne's Easy A.
Nathaniel Hawthorne.
I had to throw it in there.
So, I will say, I watched this movie last night for the first time.
Pulled a Garrett.
That's right. I'd never done it. I'd never seen it before. I don't know why.
It's starting to become a trend. I mean, with Hocus Pocus and now Easy A.
I'm learning a lot from you guys. Thank you. And I liked this one. I have to. I will be honest. I don't know why it took me so long.
Well, for those of you that haven't seen the movie, Garrett, give us a quick synopsis.
Oh my gosh, I have been waiting for this for ages. Okay, so Olive Pendergast finds herself in a strangely lucrative business when she accidentally creates a rumor about her brand new sex life. The only problem is, none of it is true. Trading gift cards for stories, Olive helps the social outcasts at her school shake off the burden of public judgment by pretending to be a, quote, slut, unquote, who says that she sleeps with them all. Eventually, the lies grow unmanageable when a teacher's marriage and a sexual predator's advances get involved, leading Olive to spill the beans in front of the whole school.
So, let's just talk about how the movie was received. I mean, I watched it. I absolutely loved it.
Did you watch it in theaters?
I did not.
No. Okay.
No. But I watched it fairly soon after it came out on DVD.
Gotcha.
And,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was one of those things of where we waited for Redbox.
Yeah, something like
It was
that.
like, oh, that looks good, but like, I'm too cheap to go to the movie, and Redbox is a thing.
I didn't realize that it was this old. I mean, it's 7 years old. It's from 2010.
Makes me feel old. Yeah. It's older than Thor.
It's older than, yeah, that's right. That is true. From our
And
last
Emma
episode.
Stone still looks better than I ever will.
Well, that, I don't know, Garrett.
That's weird.
Yeah, how am I going to compare you to that?
Sorry, I really like Emma Stone.
How can you not? Awesome. How can you not? Honestly.
So, on Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, this movie was certified fresh. It was like at 85%.
And it non-uppled. That's right. Non-uppled its budget. It was running at about an $8 million budget, and it made almost $75 million. It was very well received in that regard.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was a lucrative business venture. It was not the first movie that Emma Stone was in.
No.
That's not where we were kind of introduced to her, but it was.
Yeah, that would have been in like 2007 and Superbad.
Yeah, but she didn't have a huge role in that.
No, it was large enough though.
Yeah, but this she's front and center. Mm-hmm. Even this wasn't her first big one. She was in Zombieland too.
Yes,
Zombieland
also.
But
Zombieland 2 would be great.
right. But this is, this was kind of a big proof that she could carry a movie all on her own.
Yeah, and she did well. It was great.
Yeah, it's an entertaining film. I think, I don't know, I will say, I don't know if it's a movie that I'm going to ever think, you know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to watch Easy A again. I mean, I don't know if I love it that much, but I don't regret watching it one bit. I think it was a lot of fun.
Well,
and it really made me laugh.
I'll probably say that to myself because I teach like high school English.
Fair enough. If I was teaching high school English, I'd probably watch this too.
See, this is one of those movies that I'm currently sitting right next to the framed movie poster on my wall.
Oh, wow.
So
you're gonna have
I don't feel the same.
You have to get that up on Instagram for us.
I will the week of.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so...
But yeah, like, I love this movie, and I have watched it twice in the past couple weeks. Once to get ready for this, and then once because I found out some people that I live with haven't seen it. And I made them watch it.
Good call. Good call. So. There's plenty of, like, I don't know, worse movies to watch. Some. Or, as people in my family might say, worsest. That came up the other day. As a joke, though. As a joke. I found out later. I wasn't sure.
So what do you think Will Gluck would say about you calling this Nathaniel Hawthorne's Easy A? Will Gluck was the director.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't like it that much. But I had to throw it in there because it's so referential to the Scarlet Letter. I mean, the whole thing is an adaptation of the Scarlet Letter, and it's kind of meta in that way. I mean, it references itself, and then it references how it parallels the book and so on. We'll get into it in the podcast a little bit more. But I had to throw in Nathaniel Hawthorne. How many people out there actually know Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote the Scarlet Letter? How many people have read the Scarlet Letter?
Well, I remember I read it in high school. Did you have to read it in high school? Or did you just read it on your own? Because they don't teach it at the high school here anymore.
Nope.
Really?
I didn't have to read it in high school either. I had to read it in college.
Might have been one of the last classes that did that then, because
or one of the
Miss
first and
Holmes,
last.
love her. We read it our junior year of high school.
I think that's the year I read it too. Of course, that was a decade ago, but junior year sounds about right.
And I just kind of went right past it.
So did you read it? You read it in college then?
I read it in college, yeah.
I think it's one of those books that at the time when I read it in high school, I hated it because I was an idiot because I was in high school. But looking back on it now, it's, I mean, I've got a copy of it in my hand here. I mean, it's really clever in the way that it tells its story. There's a lot that it leaves out that today, I think, if Nathaniel Hawthorne were writing the story, I think he would do it very differently because there's a lot that is important to the plot, which it just kind of skips over. Namely, the whole story of the Scarlet Letter, for those who haven't read it, is about a woman named Hester Prynne who is basically, she gets pregnant, and the entire town knows that she has committed adultery because she's married, but her husband is kind of gone, and so she's kind of living as a single woman, and then she gets pregnant. And there's this whole scandal about how she has committed this grave sin because she lives in the 1600s in
around Boston and Salem area.
In Massachusetts.
Very Puritan.
That's exactly right. And so they're shunning her and they're treating her like this horrible person, and they actually sentence her to wear a scarlet letter embroidered onto all of her clothes.
A bright red A.
A bright red A. As proof of her adulterousness. And the plot gets even more interesting, though, when her estranged husband returns and vows to find the father of the baby. And then it gets even more interesting when you discover that the father of the baby is actually the minister who has been helping to try her case. Mm-hmm. And it's a really clever story. The thing that I really like about it, though, one of the things, is that the actual story of the adultery is never involved in the plot.
Yeah.
Like they don't sensationalize it at all. It's very much focused on the reaction to the quote-unquote crime and the ostracizing, the fallout of all of
We'll go with that.
the way that the town just treats Hester Prynne so horribly, and it builds to this massive climax where everybody dies except for Hester. Like
Dun dun dun.
the minister goes through this like almost like this massive heart attack where he dies right after confessing to the whole town that he's the father of the baby, and then her husband dies shortly after that in the story because he no longer has any reason to live because he only wanted to get revenge on the guy who had fathered this kid,
And he's pretending to be a doctor this entire time.
yeah,
And treating the minister, and it's very interwoven.
yeah. Nathaniel Hawthorne, he was a good writer. I have to admit that. I don't tell my high school English teacher I said that because I'm sure she'd laugh herself to death saying I told you so. But all right,
Oh, well.
she was right.
See, I don't know. When I read it in high school, it was after Easy A had come out, and I had already seen it, so I was excited to read the Scarlet Letter.
Now that's a kind of an interesting comment on the value of a movie like this.
So, like, it actually made me want to read it. Granted, I had a little bit of a difficult time, and it was one of the only books in high school I fell asleep during. But
Oh wow, yeah. Well, that can
but-
happen. He's got that kind of style, yeah.
but it was just kind of like, it was really interesting, and I like the way that he wrote using the people's names to describe them, that sort of thing. So it was the first time that I had ever remember seeing anything like that in literature before.
What do you mean?
And my sentence syntax is very off. Like the fact that the character Chillingsworth, that isn't he the husband?
Yes, that's the name that he takes. Interestingly,
that's the name
his
that he
actual
takes.
name is never revealed in the story. He takes on the name Roger Chillingsworth or something like that.
Because, like, the idea that you're supposed to get chills when he comes in because you know he's the bad guy, or Dimsdale because he's not really the brightest cookie in the
He's
jar.
a dim wit.
Yeah, so that was the first time that we ever really like looked into anything like that, and I had ever seen it in any form of literature, and I was thinking, wow, I'm learning this from the Scarlet Letter, and now I notice it all the time in books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Harry
Yeah.
Potter, just things like that. And so, yeah, I was actually excited to read it. And reading it, I didn't really necessarily, I guess, get a lot of it. But I did have the helpful understanding of seeing Easy A and having it described in that film as well.
Yeah. And this is different than, it's been a while now, but one of our earlier podcasts was on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
We talked in that podcast about how Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a retelling of the Odyssey. And there's, characters that are like one-to-one comparisons. That's not exactly what's going on with this movie. I mean, Olive Pendergast is not pregnant. It's quite the opposite. She's actually a virgin. But it's playing with the same ideas, and they talk about the Scarlet Letter. I mean, she has this long monologue, and they keep playing clips from the old movie, and they keep making jokes about the Demi Moore version. And so it's very self-aware in a way that I think we should talk about later. But
Definitely. And one of the things that I like about the movie and the book is the book opens with a man finding this Scarlet Letter in a box of letters, portraying this story of Hester Prynne. And I feel it's very similar to the way that Olive Pendergast is telling the story of Hester Prynne after finding this metaphorical Scarlet Letter and her reputation, and she's just kind of carrying it along and telling the story as it's relevant to her.
yeah, so the form of the movie is similar to the form of the Scarlet Letter in that it's okay. So we can go all the way back to some of my favorite philosophers like Aristotle and Plato. And Plato talks about the difference between two different ways to tell a story. In Greek, he uses the words diegesis and mimesis. Mimesis is what we normally think of when we watch a movie. It's just you get thrown into the movie, and you're watching it as it happens. Mimesis is showing you the story. It's not telling you the story. You're just watching it like the movie screen is a window. Diegesis is when there's a narrator talking to you, telling you the story, and then showing you parts of it too. And that's what this is. This is a diegetic movie where the world inside the story is kind of removed from you one extra step, because this whole movie is Olive Pendergast talking to her webcam, right?
Yeah,
that's the
retelling the story.
Retelling the story of the last few weeks of her life, and then the movie catches up to itself at the very end, and then she rides off into the sunset. But that diegetic nature, it makes for a very different kind of storytelling. I mean, this is one thing about maybe something else people would be familiar with would be the TV show How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to a lot of sitcoms, most sitcoms are pretty basic. They're pretty, they're just trying to make you laugh. They're trying to be entertaining. They're not trying to be really thoughtful necessarily. Especially older ones like Friends or Seinfeld or Frasier or something. You're just watching the story. You're just watching the people. That's mimesis. How I Met Your Mother is diegetic because it's got this whole framing device where the father is telling the story to his kids, and it makes you tell the story in a very different way. And that TV show was really clever in how it did that, how it could make certain jokes or skip over certain parts of the story because it's just, that's the way we tell stories. One thing led to another. And you see that here in Easy A, too, that she's holding up these pieces of paper that she's written on, and she's got this very conscious intention to talk to you as the audience, which I kind of like that. I think it can be a risk. Sometimes movies try to do that with a narrator, and it just kind of comes off as pandering.
Yeah.
But I think it worked in this one.
Especially if there's like a voiceover, it seems like there's just an easy way out.
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
The original Blade
I'm glad that you said that. I was thinking about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
But, in filmmaking, especially in my classes when I was in college, they said, don't use voiceover. It's a cop-out. Show us, don't tell us.
Yeah. Mimesis, not diegesis.
Yes. And, but yeah, I agree. It totally worked in this case, but it's all in how they framed it as well, because they show us the framing device rather than just, hello, I'm Emma Stone, and I'm telling you about
Oh yeah, that's true.
Stuff.
If it had just been her voice,
yeah.
If she was doing a podcast instead of a
total cop out,
that would not have been nearly as entertaining. And I think one of the things that I like about how they did that movie too is that they use that to make. Well, you used the word meta a minute ago.
Yeah.
We use that word a lot. I think we've used it on the podcast before.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? If we're talking about something being meta, what are we talking about?
I would say self-aware.
Okay, self-aware.
Self-aware and self-referential.
Do you use that word much, Garrett, to talk about movies or things like that?
I do in some cases. My favorite example is my favorite musical, which is Title of Show. And it's a musical about two guys writing a musical about two guys writing a musical about two guys writing a musical.
Oh, wow. That is complicated.
Is it that meta? I thought it was like maybe 2 levels rather than like 5.
I'm pretty sure it's just 3. But it's like, it's very self-aware in that aspect. So I think self-aware is the same way that I would go with it.
Do you know where the word comes from?
I don't know, but you're about to say something really smart that's just going to totally blow my mind.
Aristotle.
Of course.
Kind of.
Never mind. My mind isn't blown anymore.
It's not really Aristotle. Well, I mean, it kind of is. It's Greek. Aristotle. Well, have you heard the word metaphysics before? Sure. I mean, a lot of people, they hear the word metaphysics and they probably think tarot
Sounds
cards
too smart for me.
And crystals and pyramids and things. Like if you go to a bookstore and you go to the metaphysics section, you're going to get stuff about tarot cards. And
Is that really?
I mean, that's kind of nice in one sense, but in philosophy, metaphysics is the study of existence. It's the study of being. It's the study of things like like time and what it means for something to be real. These very, very big questions. And the word comes from a book that Aristotle wrote called Metaphysics, which at the time it probably meant something much more mundane. He had already written a book called The Physics, and the physics is all about the world. It's about how things operate in the world. It's just what you would imagine a book called Physics to be. Here's what happens when things move and when they stop, and how life kind of operates. And then he said, now let's write a book about, and I'm being overly simplistic here because these aren't really books so much as they are just collections of notes, but that's a different issue. But the book, The Metaphysics, is what comes after the physics. That's all metaphysics means. Meta is the Greek prefix for kind of above or beyond or after or next. And so he writes the book on the physics about the world, and then he wants to write a book on kind of what's underneath the world, what is holding up the world. When we're not just talking about objects moving, but what is the stuff itself? What is the object itself? What does it mean to exist? And so now we use the word meta to kind of talk about that next level thing. We're not just looking at the movie, but we're looking at how the movie looks at itself, or we're looking at how the movie is aware of itself. And I love, there's some really funny things in Easy A at the beginning where they talk about cheesy 80s movies that have a song and dance sequence for no reason.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this movie, they have a song and dance sequence for no reason. Or
and she fully says, because I wanted my own song and dance.
Right.
For no reason.
That's it. Or there's the scene at the beginning where the guy, the teacher says that he's not going to rap. He's not going to talk about the Scarlet Letter in rap because it's been done and it's always bad. And then they get to the restaurant scene and Lobster Todd starts rapping. And it's really bad. It's just like how he describes at the beginning. And constantly trying to talk about 80s movies, like you said, Garrett. And then this is...
But who doesn't love a good 80s movie?
Of course. How can you not?
I used to not like 80s movies.
What? And then you saw the light?
I kind of feel like
and then they grew on me. I was an angsty teen, and they were too happy for me.
Did you not watch The Breakfast Club?
I did. That was actually one movie that I liked until I'd seen it way too many times.
Fair enough.
Because everybody else wanted to watch it as well. So that one was a little bit different, and it was just the fact it was constantly referenced and on.
Yeah, oversaturated.
Which probably annoys you because that was my favorite movie for a good 3 years.
Yeah, that was a part of it.
Just so long as you don't forget about me.
Yeah.
So this, in some ways, I think that Easy A is actually drawing on those 80s movies more than it's drawing on the Scarlet Letter. I mean, it's obviously drawing on the Scarlet Letter, and we still haven't really talked about the Scarlet Letter all that much. But you get as much John Hughes in
as
this
you do
as
Hawthorne.
You get Nathaniel Hawthorne, at least.
Yeah. So maybe I should rephrase it. John Hughes and Nathaniel Hawthorne's and Will Gluck's.
If Hughes and Hawthorne had a baby, and it looked like Emma Stone.
Yeah.
My fan fiction's getting very weird here.
Yeah, it's getting a little off.
Dear. But publish it. Who knows? Maybe it's next Twilight.
Yeah, it's right there next to the Bibles.
All right. So what should we hit on first? Should we talk about the comparison and contrast of the book versus movie, or should we talk about John Hughes?
Oh, that's a hard choice. Garrett, what do you think? Hughes or Hawthorne first?
I vote Hawthorne first so we can go chronologically.
Ooh. All right.
Good point. All right, Hawthorne first then.
So...
Where to start? There's so much.
There's a lot. All right, we've already gone through the characters. We've talked about Hester Prynne. We didn't really talk about the daughter, but we'll get to that, I guess.
In the book?
From the book.
What's her name? Pearl?
Pearl.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Pearl
And
Prynne.
we've talked about Reverend Dimsdale.
Yeah.
And then Hester's husband, Chillingsworth. Let's do a quick character profile of Chillingsworth real quick, because we've talked that he's the estranged husband that shows up the day that she is pretty much branded with this scarlet letter, the scarlet A on her chest. And he like comes in and then sees what's happening and fades away and shows up at the jail to talk to Hester under the guise of a doctor. And he's learned enough. He's a smart guy, and he's learned enough from the natives that he can actually do some healing.
He can fake it as a doctor?
He could fake it as a doctor, yeah.
That was a lot easier 400 years ago.
Yeah. See that piece of paper on the wall? So the town's super excited to have this healer, this doctor in the community. And they see him as like, oh, yay, woo. But you also have Dimmesdale, who's like holding on to his kind of like his secret, right? And it's eating him up on the inside.
His guilt.
And it's making him sick. And so everybody's kind of like, you should go check on Reverend Dimmesdale. And everything just kind of shoves Chillingsworth to Dimmesdale. And what we didn't mention is that Dimmesdale at the very beginning asks Hester to confess so he can kind of get rid of his guilt.
Live vicariously through her.
Yeah, just kind of like, I'm too scared, you should do it, right? And
Typical man.
So we've got this going on, and eventually this guilt eats away at Dimmesdale, and Chillingsworth becomes consumed with his hunt for the adulterer.
Which again is right in front of him.
Yeah,
it's funny.
And they even end up living together.
Roomies.
Yeah, it's just bad news bears, right? Because they end up like, I don't know, influencing each other and just becoming terrible people. When it all comes down to it, Pearl grows up a little bit and starts identifying Dimmesdale and Chillingsworth as bad men almost. And Hester just does her own thing, making her little embroidered scarlet A's and clothes for people in the community. And then here comes Dimmesdale, who finally decides to come clean with a brand on his chest of his own, of an A.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of a shocking moment in the book.
Yeah.
When he confesses to the whole town and he like rips his shirt off.
Mm-hmm.
And does he? I don't remember. Does he rip it off, or does it accidentally come off, or does someone else rip it off, or is he like ripping his clothes in anger?
You know,
I don't remember.
I can't remember either.
But he reveals.
It's been a hot minute.
He reveals his that whereas Hester had been wearing an embroidered mark, he had actually been like clawing it into his own skin. I mean, it's really dark in that sense. Because he's just so guilty.
Yeah, I've felt guilt before. Like,
okay, so and guilt is certainly something that Olive deals with in the movie too, but it's
undeserved.
It's undeserved, yeah. And so this is what I mean when I say it's not exactly a retelling, because you can't point to a character who is like the analog of Dimmesdale in Easy A, or necessarily the analog of Chillingsworth, and even comparing Olive to Hester isn't quite right either, because the whole idea of the movie is that she has not actually done anything.
Yeah.
But she's pretending like she has.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the reputation and the fallout that comes from this encounter, you know.
But tell me what you guys think of this idea. This is something that was kind of in the back of my head as I was watching this last night, and just especially as you were describing the book now, Bobby. The idea is forming. I wonder if this movie isn't almost like a subversion of the Scarlet Letter, because Hester Prynne turned upside down is kind of like Olive, and Chillingsworth turned upside down is kind of like Woodchuck Todd. I mean, and what I mean by that is that Hester in the book really hasn't done. I mean, she's committed adultery, I suppose, but other than that, she's this very sympathetic character. Like, you really feel for her. She's not a villainous character by any means.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's not done
Excellent
anything
seamstress.
bad. But Olive, she does kind of become worse and worse throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Until the end, when the guilt kind of becomes so heavy. And what you were describing about Chillingsworth kind of coming in and out of the story, and you don't really like him whenever he shows up. Well, that's kind of what Woodchuck Todd is like in the movie, except the other way.
The opposite.
He comes
Yeah. You
in
do
and
like him.
out, but you always do like him, exactly, because he's not a jerk. I don't know who we could say Dinsdale is upside down.
I vote Bree. The reason that everything got started in the first place.
Oh, yeah, and she's also the religious. The religious
She ends up
person
being
in
the
movie.
like pretending to be religious, but like she's the whole reason.
I'm
that
confused.
She pulls her into the bathroom and
That's
is like,
Bree.
"Oh my gosh, tell me everything that happened this last weekend." Blah 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 blah. Now you're a super slut like me. That sort of stuff.
What's Amanda Bynes' characters? That's who I thought you were talking about.
I don't know. I want to say something like Mary Ellen, but I know that's not right.
Oh, okay. I'll get it in 2 minutes. I'll get it here. Marianne.
Marianne. I'm so
that would be my
close.
vote. I would say Marianne is Dimsdale upside down because she. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's kind of Bree, but I think it's Marianne's fault more than Bree's fault because it's Marianne who starts telling everybody else.
That's true.
And she's definitely, I mean, she's not a priest. She's a pastor's kid. Which,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that was hilarious. I wish Fred Armisen had been in this movie more.
That would have been amazing. He's so awesome.
He's my second favorite actor in this movie. Yeah, but do you see what I mean? How it's similar to the story, but it's kind of like it's a subversion. It's turned upside down so that the characters are still doing some of the same things. I mean, the whole thing with Olive going and sewing A's onto her own clothes. She doesn't have to do it, but she's choosing to do it to make a
Doing
point.
it anyway, yeah.
And she's not dressing very
Modestly,
but she's intentionally dressing like, in her words, a tramp. I like this idea. The more I talk, the more convinced I am that I'm right. That's usually a dangerous thing to say, but I think I'm on to something, boys.
I think it is kind of an interesting point because I've never really thought about it like that before.
But yeah, it's holding up as much as as you keep talking, it keeps holding water. So
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody fight us in the review comments or
That's
something
right.
like that.
So, okay, if this
come at us, bro.
if if this follows through, where would, because there is adultery in the movie,
Yes.
but I don't know if that's just like
I don't know. I
icing on the
think.
cake or what.
Are you talking about the Griffiths?
Yeah. Side note,
I-
don't know if I've ever seen Lisa Kudrow in a role that I didn't like her in. She was
Yeah,
horrible
that's
in this
true.
movie,
Oh yeah, she's pretty bad.
right?
But I don't know. I think they kind of split the infidelity away from like the main character of this because it, like not really. You don't really want to portray a girl in high school as
Fair point.
well, I guess she is considered the homewrecker, but like the actual infidelity person causer, I guess.
Oh, here it is. Because the home wrecking is actually seen as a heroic moment in the movie, right? Like Olive is doing something really good when she chooses to assume the role of the home wrecker because she
But-
agrees to tell that lie, at least
Well,
at
it's
first.
because she's lowering herself more,
right, but in the
so
in the
she
book,
raises herself in the audience's eyes.
Yeah, that's what.
Oh,
yeah.
Phil would be so proud right now.
Boom.
Sorry, Phil is my professor for play analysis. He
Phil,
would be so impressed that I made that connection.
Give Garrett extra credit.
Yeah.
He's
Listen to our
so sweet.
podcast
I need it.
and give Garrett extra credit.
Okay, I like this. I think. Yeah.
But I think it is kind of an interesting point to not make the protagonist of this movie the one that is, what's the phrase, being the person that is being the infidelity. Does that make sense?
She's not the adulteress.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
But they
but
had
that's
to
what
have
everybody
this.
thinks she is.
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly adultery because she's not married, but
Yeah.
But it had to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Like because
because it's the Scarlet Letter in a kind
Yes.
of- But yeah, you're
And I don't
right.
care whether the president of the Americas tells me I'm wrong.
Oh, that guy. Now I had to look this up because there were so many little jokes like this when they made the joke about Twilight. That guy was in Twilight. Apparently, the guy who played Micah, he was in the first Twilight movie. So
Yeah.
when they make the joke about the Bible being
What
next
was
to
his
Twilight,
name?
I don't know. I haven't.
I can't remember either. I've watched it once. But anyway, I think it is. I think that it was just separated so that it, one, brought in more characters, and two, kept the 17-year-old girl from
actually sleeping with her teacher, because I was afraid that's what was going to happen, or not actually sleep with him, but I thought that was going to be the rumor that she had slept with the cool teacher.
Yeah.
So I was glad that it didn't go that route.
Well, do you think that her true lack of sexual promiscuity and her behavior and stuff like that makes her more sympathetic, or does the fact that she's lying about it dash some of the sympathy?
Well, I think every time she lies, she's doing it. Like, they really try to hit you over the head with the fact that she's doing it to help somebody else.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Like when she's by the pool and there's the kid who calls himself, he has all these horrible things that he calls himself, and she takes pity on him and says, "Okay, you can tell people you fondled me." Like,
but I better get an Office Max gift card in my locker because I have my eye on a label maker.
On one level, like that's kind of, I mean, there's a lot of problems with what she does there.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can kind of see she's trying to help this guy not feel so bad about himself. And I mean, lying that you gave a guy chlamydia is obviously not a good thing. But
it's not something to be proud of.
But she's doing it to try and save her teacher's marriage because he's married to a horrible person.
Yeah.
And, so I think in a weird sort of way, her actual virginity is actually entirely beside the point in the movie.
Yeah.
It's all about, like you said earlier, it's all about just people's perceptions of her.
Mm-hmm.
And us as the audience, we perceive her as this weird kind of... I actually wrote that in my notes. Like, is she a hero or not? I mean, because she's doing these things that she really shouldn't be doing, but she's doing them to help other people. And she's getting the dumbest kind of payback for it, too, right? Like, she's getting gift cards to... And coupons. She gets a coupon to...
I love the,
something.
A coupon? Really?
Like, she's not even making money. It's that would be one thing.
Yeah.
If she was rolling in the dough from doing this, then I think it would be harder to sympathize with her. But it's almost like she's sacrificing her social standing for almost worthless prizes.
But I do think it is interesting that after a while she starts reaching out to different churches or Fred Armisen as the pastor, and then she just starts realizing this is not this is not working for me. So she kind of has to go to her mother. Not saying that church is bad, but it's kind of goes along with the Scarlet Letter thing that the people that were really high and mighty with their religion were the people that didn't necessarily help the situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They just made it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, the religion was a big theme in Hawthorne's writing, and definitely in this movie. I really laughed in that Fred Armisen scene when you realize that he's Marianne's dad. Oh my god! I wish he. Yeah, that was. There is a hell. Yeah. No, it's not up for debate. Yeah, there is. You are. Yes. Oh. Hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know.
And we go to our segue machine to move on to what's next.
Ding, 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 ding. I'm saying John Hughes movies, man.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, let's go that way.
Of the different movies, okay, so I counted, we already said The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off a lot. I mean, not only do you get a clip from it, but there's a lot of little things that she says or does, like when she's in the shower and makes the mohawk with the shampoo.
Yeah,
that's Ferris Bueller again.
Straight up.
So there's lots of things like that.
And I read somewhere that she just kind of did that, and she was like, "I've never had a lesson," and she just went with it.
Yeah, that's something else that she says when she's playing the guitar, just like how I forget. Bueller says that at some point too.
Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, what in the movie?
Yeah.
16 Candles gets a shout out. I had never heard of Can't Buy Me Love.
Really?
I don't know.
Oh wow, yeah, that's one my mom would watch all the time.
I mean, I've watched the others.
Maybe that's why I got so sick of those 80s movies. My mom watched them a lot.
Oh, she loves them.
That could be it.
Loves them.
I don't think I would like them that much if I had to watch them with my mom either.
Yeah.
And Say Anything. That's the last one.
Say Anything.
I don't know if I missed any. Did you guys see any others?
I can't.
I think when they go through that montage and they play a
Yeah.
bunch, I think those are all the ones that they play. Of those, or if there are others, like which one, if you had to watch one of them this afternoon, which one would you pick?
I like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a classic.
The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because I really like both of those.
Which would be your least favorite? I mean, for me, it's easy. It's 16 Candles, because that movie is creepy as
Yeah.
I'd probably have to agree with you.
gross. But I think that I think Easy A did a really good job of taking these movies and
Oh, definitely.
not retelling them necessarily. Although by the end, that last scene where she rides off on the lawnmower after he holds the speakers up like
above
Say
his head.
Anything,
Yeah.
and they
And they're
have their
playing Don't You
fists in the
Forget About
air
Me,
like
and
the
it's-
Breakfast Club, and they're playing the song from 16 Candles. Like it's everything all mashed up together.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I think it was a
that's
great way
clever.
to pay homage
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
to John Hughes and all those movies. To be honest, there was that time in like the late 90s, early 2000s where all these teen movies came out that were just terrible. And I really like the fact that this was 2010 and they just skipped right past those and went to the good ones in the 80s.
Yeah, they're not they're not trying to reference like teen comedies from the 90s. Like, what are you thinking? That's horrible.
Oh, all of them.
Oh, just every one of them.
No, well, I guess
All of the ones that I'm thinking of are just like they're almost direct to video excuses to be softcore porn. Like it's not really there's not really stories. It's just or like well, I mean there are a couple from the like Van Wilder was from the 90s.
Van Wilder was fun.
But that's not a teen comedy necessarily.
No,
It's a
it's-
college movie.
I'm thinking like She's All That
Oh,
and
Bring It On.
Bring It On.
It's already been brought. We need Melissa so she can crack that out.
Yeah, exactly. She would do amazing. Oh, what was the other one? Oh, basically every movie that not another teen movie made fun of.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
It's a lot of those movies are pretty creepy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like,
10 Things I Hate About You.
oh,
minute.
that's next
Wait a
level.
minute.
That's next level.
That's the exception that proves it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was Shakespeare. Hello.
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. How could I forget? Yeah. If you haven't checked out our podcast on that was what, episode 8, 9, 10, something like that.
I don't know, but you should listen to it because it's amazing.
That is cool.
That's pretty fun.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that makes 80s movies better than those 90s movies, that a lot of the 90s movies,
I was going to say nostalgia.
it's not just nostalgia. That would be a poor reason.
Yeah.
I think when I think a lot of those 90s movies, a lot of the main theme that comes to mind is people are trying to have sex. That seems like
Yeah.
a big thing in it. You know, they're trying like American Pie.
Yeah.
What was the movie where they make the bet to make the not popular girl popular?
She's All That.
That's she.
Or
Oh, that's
no.
She's All That.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to get laid.
Yeah, it's way over sexualized.
In the 80s, there is some of that. Again, that's why 16 Candles, I think, is the worst one on my list. But a lot of what you see in 80s teen comedies, it's them trying to find themselves. They're
Trying to fit in.
They're trying to make sense of who they are as individuals. They're dealing with much more interesting questions of identity and existence, things that we can talk about philosophically even, that philosophers have dealt with for a long time.
Existentialism on prom night.
There you go. And I think that's what Easy A does. Ironically, again, it's even though it's a movie about people trying to have sex, kind of, they're not. They're just trying to talk about themselves as if they've had sex.
Yeah, yeah.
When actually, it's a movie about her trying to make sense of who she is and who she wants to be. So in some ways, this is a 2010 movie that makes it look like it's going to be a 90s movie, but it's actually an 80s movie.
Yeah.
And
Woof.
Good save.
the thing that really I was thinking about as I was writing my notes for this was there's a particular philosopher who you should look at. It's hard for him to... No, I'm not going to say that. There's a particular philosopher you can look at. Jean-Paul Sartre. It's French. so- Sartre. We'll say Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre. He has a famous line. He's not the first guy, but to be in this school of thought. But we've talked about existentialism before, and he's one of the great granddaddies of contemporary existentialist thought, and his famous summary of his position on identity. He says, existence precedes essence. Existence precedes essence. What we were talking about earlier about metaphysics, kind of, what is something, what is the stuff, not just what does it mean for something to be hot or cold, or what does it mean for something to be heavy or light, but what does it mean for something to be, period. That's, when you're talking about something's essence, that's what you're talking about. What makes the thing what it is. You can change, like, you could cut off my arms and I would still be me. You could change my hair color, you could make me invisible and I would still be me. You're changing all of these accidental things about me. But if you were to change my essence, I would no longer be me. I would no longer be Anthony. That's the way philosophers had talked about yourself for a long time. Sartre said, actually, no. You can change your essence. He thought that you actually get to choose your essence. Your essence is not something that's given to you, but it's something that you select, that you are free in various ways to make yourself what you want to be. And I think that's what you kind of see Olive doing in the movie, right? She chooses, she's got a weird set of motivations, but she chooses to make herself into this public figure. She chooses this identity for herself, where she says, well, now I'm going to be the slut, and all of the associated baggage that comes with people looking at me like that. I'm going to own that now. It's I don't know. I've been talking for a while here, guys. What do you think about?
Hey, you're the one
this?
that knows philosophy.
But am I right in saying this about? Do you see what I mean? Maybe about existence preceding essence. Like if her essence was to be a tramp, then she would actually have to go out and change something about her. It's not just a matter of choice. She just starts talking about herself this way, and she starts spreading these rumors, and other people start talking about herself. And so her existence is already there, but now she's going and trying to change her public figure, and then her essence, the way that people identify her. That's
deep.
I think it's an interesting. I mean, I don't know. Is that something that people do on a smaller scale, or is this something that you've seen?
Well,
how realistic is this? I guess is what I'm asking.
We can always take that 1980s classic "Can't Buy Me Love" into account.
I've never seen that movie. I'd never even heard of it.
Well, it's where McDreamy is a nerd, and he's...
Oh, wait, from Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah.
I'm so glad I know what you mean when you say that.
Well, I used to have to do these grading nights where every other teacher in the English department is female and wanted to watch Grey's Anatomy. So, Anyway, that being said, Patrick Dempsey is a nerd, and he ends up tutoring this popular girl. They pretend to be a thing so he can become popular.
Oh.
So,
gee, that sounds familiar.
It sounds familiar. And it all kind of blows up. And
does she fall for him?
She does.
Oh, how romantic.
But something happens to where there's conflict, like any other good story. And then there's a resolution. And
does her jock boyfriend go to punch him in the face?
Well, they're supposedly dating, so...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh.
She says something, well, no, we're just kind of, and then he feels bad, and then she feels bad, and it's all about keeping up appearances, and yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but that's the gist of it. Yeah. Nick Cannon did another movie that was supposed to be like it
with Mariah Carey. Was she the teacher?
Oh, but dear. Anyway, yeah.
And chlamydia. Wait. So, and I think with the Breakfast Club, you actually, like what you're just describing, you kind of see it there too, because this difference between what you are versus what you choose to be, that's what maybe that's a better way to describe it more simply. A lot of philosophers dealing with identity kind of before the existentialists, they basically said, you are what you are. Like it or not, that's what you are. And you can grow in various ways. You can change what you are, but that takes time. It's hard. Aristotle has this whole complicated system where you have to grow in various virtues over the course of your life. And the idea of simply choosing to be different doesn't make sense to Aristotle, because you have these habits that you are stuck in, and it's only through great effort and discipline that you can change yourself. And then Sartre comes in and says, well, yeah, or maybe you're free to just choose to do something different. And that's it. Forget about habits. You're free. And so that difference between what you are versus what you choose, Sartre says, let's focus on what you choose rather than focusing on what you are. And like in the Breakfast Club, they are all of these different things, right? The jock and the popular girl and the nerd and the weirdo and the criminal. The criminal, that's the other one. Yeah, and the criminal. But then they choose to be friends for this one day.
Yeah.
For this, but they do still kind of end up. There's this implication that their essence is going to win out over their existence, over their choice. But
you know, you were saying like it's your choices, and it just made me think of one of the opening lines from The Jerk. Steve Martin's sitting there. I was born a poor black child.
Oh, Steve Martin.
Sorry, guys. I'm derailing the podcast, but that needed to be said.
Oh, bring it back with the adopted son in Easy A, her brother.
Oh,
how about that?
Chip. There we go.
Chip. Yeah, that's his name. I love Stanley Tucci. I wrote in my notes as we're watching. I don't remember at what point I wrote this, but as I'm looking at my notes now, I see that I wrote Stanley Tucci equals Jesus. He is fantastic in this movie.
So funny.
Oh, so good.
And he's fantastic in most every movie I've seen him in. This movie takes the cake. I want an entire movie with just him and the mom. The mom and the dad in this movie are brilliant.
You're not wrong.
Absolutely brilliant. I can't love them enough.
Oh, especially you're adopted?
What? Who told you?
Or when they're going through they're trying to pick the movie, and he has, I forget what the other one is, the bucket list. We'll watch the bucket list and then remind me to watch the bucket list off of our bucket list. Like, God, you are such a dope, and I love you so much. I want to be you.
And yet your daughters would probably be like, please don't be.
Which is just going to make me do it all the more. Yes. And honestly, to be a little more serious, the dad is kind of in there for comic relief, but the mom, she's fantastic.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That scene at the end where she and Olive are sitting on the hood of the car talking, having a heart-to-heart, that's, I think that's something else that makes this movie stand above a lot of teen comedies, because it really has some genuine heart. And the family, there's no conflict. There's a lot of conflict in the movie, but not within the family. Like, the people that she loves, they genuinely love her, and they protect her, and they take care of her and support her. They support her through everything.
Yeah, yeah.
They support her having a boyfriend who's a homosexual, who's not actually her boyfriend. I mean, I love it so much.
It's very good.
And, you know,
I'm gushing now.
We're alluding to all of these 80s movies, but in the
You're
movie...
gushing for me, Anthony, because, like,
Well, you. I'm gonna drink more coffee. You go gush now.
Oh, my gushing. Especially the parents' parts, they're just so well written. And I think that really adds to the appeal of them. Rosemary and Dill, the mom and the dad. Because a lot of the stuff, it is really clever and witty, and it's so well thought out that, it makes me so happy.
Like the thing with the peas, where she's writing the word that she said that you're not supposed to say. And they don't want to say it in front of the kid, so he says, spell it with your P's. Like he's really excited that it's like a game. And then right before that scene's over, he like leans over and whispers to her, and for what it's worth, I'm sure that's exactly what she was being. Like, that's such a sweet moment to really underscore just how, well, like you said, clever the dad is, and how supportive he is too.
Really is a great movie.
I will say, it took me a long time to realize that Woodchuck Todd was the same Todd from the bedroom scene when she was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it took me longer than it probably should have to make that connection.
But I think that's really interesting, too, going back to that, I guess, middle school scene. Like, that's where it kind of starts, her lying to help somebody out.
Yeah.
And, like, I never really noticed that the first couple times I watched it, but then I was like, one day it just hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's been doing this since middle school. It just hasn't been this big of a deal.
She's a serial offender.
But it's just, I think it's, I don't know, it's something that's interesting. I don't know, it makes me think that she's a good person, even though she does some things that are morally construed as wrong.
Yeah. Are you happy to call her a hero in this?
I don't know if I would say that she's a hero, because I think a hero is
the hero has to go through the hero cycle, man.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like her story, it's just her like wanting to do good and, like you said, figure out like who she is, blah blah blah, like the whole idea that the 80s movies were trying to get to. But as she's going, she just keeps getting lower and lower and lower and lower, which inevitably brings her to the top, because she has lowered herself so much trying to do good that eventually she does, in some weird way, manage to do good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
So it's just kind of like, I don't know if I would say that she's a hero, but she definitely is the main part of the story. Like, if those things hadn't have happened, and if she hadn't have lowered herself, she wouldn't be at the top where she is at the end, when everybody else is like, wait, what? Oh, like,
okay.
When they learned that she wasn't actually super slut.
Right. Well, okay, here's the question that I kept having while watching it, because I know we're running
We're getting
to
low
the
on
hour.
time. Yeah.
But how accurate of a portrayal of a high school do you think this movie is? Because I wrote, and I did write down when I wrote this, because it took 13 and a half minutes for me to say, not even close. This is such nonsense. Like, nobody in a high school would honestly care this much that one girl had sex. I just don't see it happening.
I definitely don't see that happening.
Like, certainly not to the degree that the entire school suddenly got interested in some girl that nobody even knew at the beginning.
I mean, it depends on who it was and their reputation before, that would be that would be paramount to the situation. But still, gossip for an afternoon.
Yeah, it would not. I mean, once she started going, going to the party and having really a really loud
Encounter.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Word.
Encounter with Brandon. Sure, yeah, that would spark the rumor mill for a while. But I think
it would die down fairly quick.
I agree.
Yeah.
There would be something else. People would move on. That part was hard for me to swallow with this movie.
Like, it was a really big jump from, being a 10-story building and not having Google Maps find you, and then being a crack on the sidewalk and having Google Maps find you. But it's a movie.
Sure.
You have to get the conflict going at least 0 to 35 in the first couple minutes.
Yeah. So who would you recommend this movie for, Garrett?
Everybody over the age of 14, because I remember when I first watched it, the word that she spells out with her P's, a group of friends and I were watching it, and my friend Amanda just stopped and went, "Hey, Mrs. Ryan, what is this word mean?" And that was a very insightful night for us all.
Yeah. It's an educational film.
But I think, yeah, we were like, I don't know, 13 at that time, 14. So I'm sure that there's, like 7-year-olds out there that know what that word is. But for us, we didn't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's definitely, I would say, for older a little bit, but definitely a show for everybody to watch.
Fair enough. Yeah. Is there?
All right.
I think I don't really have anything to add to that.
No, I think that pretty much hits the nail on the head. And if you ever have to read
the Scarlet
Letter,
this would be a really good companion piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd change about it?
No, actually. I
would
really
love to
liked
have
it.
seen Rosemary and Dill more.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, there's that.
parents.
The only other thought I did have, one other 80s movie that I thought would make a brilliant addition, Kindergarten Cop, with John McClane.
Oh, boy. Yeah, yeah.
Hey.
Who would you have, like, John McClane square off against?
Malcolm McDowell, the principal. Who got the funniest laugh? I laughed so hard when he said, "I'm a public school teacher, or I'm a principal of a public school. My job is to keep the girls off the pole and the boys off the pipe."
And if I do that, I get a bonus.
Oh my god, that was so funny. He's another person like Stanley Tucci, who's not in this movie all that much.
Oh, yeah, and Fred Armisen.
Could have, yeah. And Fred
we needed
Armisen
more of all of them.
They had a great supporting cast.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it was a very well put together movie, and it definitely got its point across, but it really made the audience think too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love it when you get done watching a film and you are like, oh, now I feel like I need to think about that because it did its job, or it like made you feel something. So
yeah, we can go.
That's what makes me happy.
Talk about Sartrean existentialism.
Maybe not today.
Well, it'll be a good excuse to drink dark coffee and smoke exotic cigarettes, because you can just say, well, we're trying to channel the philosopher here.
Fair point.
All right.
Well, I think with that, that's a great place to end on, right?
I want some coffee.
Yeah, wow. So thanks for joining us today on the Story Cauldron, and the music for this episode is from the band Hook Sounds.
And we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on the Twitter. You can find us at The Story Cauldron or Story Cauldron, search around. And on YouTube. Be sure to follow us on there. We're talking about trying to get some more video content in addition to what we put out every week on Wednesdays. So follow us on YouTube for more of that.
And definitely go and check out thestorycauldron.com if you want to find out more information about the three of us, or if you are interested in any of the things that we talk about. And you can also find us on iTunes, and you can rate us and leave a review.
It helps other people to find the podcast, and it keeps us doing what we love to do, knowing that you can stand to listen to us for at least an hour at a time. But yes, I hope you guys all take care, and until next time, bye.
Bye.